Hi Math 141, this video is for section 3.3, Graphs of Polynomial Functions. Specifically, this is number 23 in the exercise portion of the section. So the goal of this problem is we're presented the function f of x is equal to the square root of negative 42 plus 19x minus 2x squared. What the problem is asking us to do is to determine the domain of this function. So first off, to begin, our focus should primarily be going towards the radicand, or in other words, the image that we have, or the expression that we have underneath the radical. Because that's where our problems, if there are going to be any, are going to occur. What you want to note here is that the expression, or the radicand in this case, it has restrictions, and this is where you kind of have to, for more or less of a better word, you have to kind of care. So what we're saying here is that this number that I have highlighted in this gold, we are saying that this expression of negative 42 plus 19x minus 2x squared, it has to be a number that is either greater than or equal to 0. The why behind that is because I can only take the square root of 0 or a positive number. If I start getting negatives underneath the radical, then I'm going to start working with imaginary numbers, and I can't graph those on a x and y coordinate plane. So because I am who I am, I'm going to go ahead and actually rewrite this problem in descending order, just I want to and I can. So I like it this way. It looks more familiar to me. Basically, it's just so it doesn't throw my brain for a loop. So then what I would recommend that you do is try to see if you can factor this. Does this look factorable? So let's just try it. So I know that because I have a quadratic, my goal would be to break it into two binomials. And actually what I might do even before that is, let's take that negative out. So let's factor that negative. So now I'm going to have 2x squared minus 19x plus 42. And then is greater than or equal to 0. So now I'm just going to focus on what's inside the quantity. So I'm going to try to break this down. So I would have a 2x here and an x here. I do have a positive 42 here, but my middle term is negative. So that would tell me that I need to have a negative here and a negative here, so that when I'm foiling, my middle terms will be negative, but when I multiply my last terms together, a negative times a negative will result in a positive. Well, I will kind of spoil it for you, but we can't actually factor this. If you think about it, if you look at 42, for example, if I were to break it down into its prime factors, the largest factor that I can get would be a 7. Well, if I put the 7 here and start to FOIL, the largest number that I'm going to get is a 14. And there's no way that I'm going to be able to get that 19. Because again, if I put 6 in here, 14 plus 6 is going to give me 20. So I'm short. So this isn't going to work. So let's go ahead and start fresh. And you might be saying, why did I do that? Why didn't I just get to the heart of the answer? And the short answer is that I mean and want you to kind of suffer just a little bit, because that's kind of what learning is. You want to make your brain sweat, and the long answer is I want you to learn all these different strategies and realize that starting a problem, you're not going to always have the correct solution or that correct pathway. Sometimes it's going to be trial and error. Wasn't that a warm, heartwarming moment? Probably not. You're probably silently shaking your head no. Okay, so what I'm going to go ahead and do is I realize that I can't factor this, so I'm going to go ahead and do my quadratic formula instead. So I'm going to outline my A, my B, and my C. And I can totally leave the negatives in there. I don't have to worry about it when I start working with the quadratic formula. So when we set this up, we're going to do a negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. And to save us a little bit of time in terms of saving space on the video, I'm going to go ahead and simplify this down, and what I would encourage you to do at this moment is pause the video and actually do the cleanup on your own and just check it with what I'm getting. So as I clean this up, I'm going to end up getting my negative 19 plus or minus. I'm actually going to get this whole radicand is going to simplify down to 25. And that's going to all be over negative 4. So again, as I keep going, I'm going to get negative 19 plus or minus 5 all over negative 4. And if we were to simplify that down, we'll get 2 answers. So one of them, we're going to end up getting a 7/2, and the other, we're going to end up getting positive 6. So let's kind of scoot this up. And what I want you to note here, I'm just going to use a rough sketch because we were always talking about doing rough sketches in this section. So I'm just going to randomly just do a rough sketch. So I know that I'm going to call this one 7/2, and I'm going to call this one 6. So I might as well just actually label those so that we can see. And what I want you to know here is we were working with a polynomial that its largest degree is 2. So we're actually working with a quadratic. And even if you don't recognize that, even if you're going more general, so we have an even polynomial, and the lead coefficient was negative 2. So the end behavior of this graph is going to end up being down, down. And we know that the multiplicity in this case, because we're only getting a 7/2 and a 6, plus we are working with a quadratic, it's going to cut through somewhere along those lines. And again, our goal, is to find out when that expression is greater than or equal to 0. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight this in orange. So it's definitely 0 here, positive, or in other words, bigger than 0, bigger than 0, bigger than 0, bigger than 0, and we hit 0 again. So our domain is what I have highlighted in the gold. Our domain is going to include and start with 7/2 or 3.5, and it's going to go until we reach and include 6. This is our domain. I hope this was helpful. If you do have any questions, let me know.